We just gotta wait for Instagram real quick. Pop, pop. Come on. Today, Junior. All right, guys, we're back on with the man of the hour, Doug Howlett from Doug. Who do you actually? Did I even say your name right? I'm horrible at this.
No, that's okay, man. That's okay. It's Doug Howlett, actually. So,
Howlett. I knew.
yeah, but I've been called much worse, man. So I can roll with that.
It's good. It's good. Why don't we? We'll turn the key, man. We'll put it right underway. We'll put the mic in your hand. Why don't you tell everybody who you are, where you're from, and a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, sure, man. I've been sort of an outdoor industry vagabond for, gosh, over 30 years now. It's depressing to say out loud because, I remember when I was a young guy in the business, and now I am one of the old guys. It's a little scary, and I don't know what it says about this industry. But yeah, I've been in the outdoor business, mostly in publishing, much of my career. I live in Virginia. I grew up in southeastern Virginia, hunting and fishing. My dad was a big hunter, and I'm sure we'll talk about that in a little bit. It's a little different style of hunting when it comes to deer in that part of the state and that part of the country. But grew up hunting and started to, wasn't sure what I wanted to do in school. I liked to write. I was always big into that. Loved to read as a kid. So I was one of those weird, a lot of people that love to read and write don't hunt. And a
Yeah.
lot of people that, hunt do practical stuff with their lives. They can go out and be handy and fix stuff and do surgery and whatever. I've seen the gamut. I sort of fit in this weird niche where I love to hunt, I love to write, and I was lucky enough in my career to be able to marry the two and cobble together a good enough income to keep a roof over my head and my children and the electric running through the wires. So that's a little bit about me. Like I said, I've been mostly in publishing. Started out as a newspaper reporter in Virginia and North Carolina. Did that for a few years. Realized that was a really fast way to go completely broke, and luckily got a job with NRA. This is so to a lot of the guys probably listen to podcasts these days. They probably don't remember this time, this pre-computer time, but we used to actually have to look for jobs in the wanted pages in a newspaper. And I was looking up in Washington, D.C., in the Washington Post, because I figured with my degree in journalism and English, my background, I was the only place I was going to find anything where I could even remotely use those skills and make a living would be up in a big city, unfortunately. And I was lucky enough one day I found a job with NRA and or a job they were advertising for assistant editor at American Hunter magazine, and I was lucky enough to get that job as my managing editor at the time told me. He said, when I asked him why I got the job, he said, because you were the only one that came in that had blood under your fingernails during the interview. So, I was lucky, and then that set me on a trajectory. Spent time there. Went to National Wild Turkey Federation, where I was editor in chief there for 7 years, and then worked as a deputy editor at Outdoor Life magazine. Uh, did a little time with Grandview Outdoors and freelanced for a while. Was editor in chief of Gun Digest magazine for about 4 years, and then took a little sort of career hiatus in a way. Worked to work for a tech company, iSportsman here on my shirt, that does. They are a digital company that makes software used largely on military bases to manage your hunting and fishing programs. So I was still working around the hunting environment, but I wasn't necessarily a content creator at that time. Still did a little freelance writing on the side, and now I've got I do have a day gig. I work for U.S. Law Shield as editor in chief there. We work with a number of our partners, creating great newsletters to share gun law news with our members and their customers, our partners' customers. Been there for about 4 years and really love it. It's a little different than what I've done in the past, but I can't say enough about the company and the mission of their work.
That's awesome. Doug, I want to rewind for a quick second because you said that you grew up hunting in a different way than most have in the past. What does that kind of look like for you?
Yeah, man. So, you know, if you grew up reading the old like Nash Buckingham in the Southeast and Robert Ruark, who did a lot of Africa stuff, but he has a famous old story, Dixie Deer Hunt. I grew up hunting, it's very much a hunt club culture in that part of the country. And the eastern half of North Carolina, eastern half, particularly the southeastern part of Virginia, it's all organized in clubs, and they still, to this day, run deer with dogs. And so until I was like 14, I thought everybody hunted deer with dogs. I didn't realize we were sort of the growing minority in the deer hunting world. But and as I've grown older, I don't do that very much. Actually, when I started working with NRA, I quit doing a lot of it, partially because I moved farther away from where I was at home, but also there wasn't a lot of opportunity to write about that. And if I was going to spend time in the field, I needed to be able to use the products that I was covering for the magazine and sort of blend it, because you don't have it's like anything that you do that you love. You don't get to spend as much time doing the love part as you do the work part, whether you guys, getting footage and preparing for things in the studio, a game warden, a lot of guys become game wardens because they love being outdoors. Well, they get to be outdoors, but they do not get to hunt a whole lot, and it's kind of like that with us. Certainly some guys are better than others that manage the time in the field and behind the keyboard. But I found it was a very labor intensive job that took a lot of time, a lot of extra time if you cared about your work and what you were delivering. So I didn't hunt as much with dogs when I was younger, when I was older, but up until I was in my mid 20s, dude, that was all I did just about. And, I've talked to plenty of people who can't imagine it. You always hear we shoot dogs, chasing deer where we are. And, I would expect that. You'd shoot a dog down there, you better look out because the boys are going to be coming after you. It's a whole different mindset. But I just tell guys this: imagine, a lot of guys can imagine hunting rabbits with dogs. Just imagine the rabbits weigh 80 to 100 pounds. And man, to this day, I love all types of hunting, and I've hunted all over North America. I've had that good fortune to have that opportunity. But there is nothing that gets your heart going than hearing a pack of hounds just screaming your direction, and you start hearing those limbs and leaves cracking and brush breaking as that's coming towards you, because you don't know whether it's a huge 12-point buck or a 70-pound fawn. But it gets that heart going either way.
And I bet you, like, growing up and getting into like editing and writing and meeting all these people probably gave you some type of crap about it, because not everybody's really has a true love or passion for it as other people do.
Yeah, it wasn't too bad. I I certainly got some ribbing. Of all my good friends that I hung out with in high school, I was the only one that went to college. Not that I didn't know people that went to college, but my tight group, that network I was really tight with, they all went to work, and they thought I was stupid, and I was like, dude, I'm sitting in a room 50-60% girls all day, and you're out on a job site. This makes perfect sense to me. you know, I was fine dragging that out as long as I could. But I always like to read and always like to write. And, I gravitated towards some of the classics back in the old days. A lot of us old guys, a lot of young guys that still want to write. And there's fewer of them now, obviously, with all the new outlets for, content creation. But, we all grew up with a fascination in Hemingway and his stories and how he managed to blend the, that writing style with masculinity and manly pursuits, and that really embodied the outdoors and captured that spirit of what every one of us in various capacities experiences when we're out there and what keeps bringing us back time and time again. And my goal was always to want to try to capture that and express it. The funny thing, you grow up and you do some stupid stuff when you're young, and you can't always write about everything, but some of those are also, some of the things that happen in camp, from guys drinking too much and just being stupid, playing cards, some of the stories you hear. Um, Man, I wouldn't trade that for the world. And I wish I could uh, share all of that sometimes, but I think it would be misunderstood in today's world too.
Mm.
So you always got to sort of walk that line. But it was a great way to grow up, man. I grew up. We had 30 some guys in our hunt club, and a bunch of them had kids, and we were out there every weekend. We had a fairly lengthy deer season, about 7 weeks long, gun season, and we were there every weekend and on the holidays, and we were running around in the woods at night, wrecking on four wheelers. We were allowed to, as long as you didn't have a firearm in the truck. Back then, you were allowed to legally drive around and shine lights in the field and look at deer. Hell, we were 12 years old while our dads were playing poker, and we were jumping in the truck and driving it around at 12 years old. We had like five of us crammed in the front seat. Back in the days when it was only a single cab, Ford or Chevy, and we're cruising around just getting in all kinds of damn trouble. And of course, when you got back and you got in trouble, you had 30 guys there that all had permission from your dad to whip your ass if you got out of line. So, there was a balance there, man.
Yeah. It probably made a real man out of you, honestly, because you're around all those guys and you have a whole different type of discipline.
Well, you learned to say yes, sir.
Yeah.
That's for
So
sure.
one of the questions, and it's kind of crazy to me that you've kind of seen this whole entire outdoor industry in itself kind of evolve from one thing to another, because when you had started writing, that was really all it was, you know, magazines and everything was reading and writing. It's not what it is today for content creation. So what kind of things have you seen in this evolve, and you have to adapt to it?
Man, I tell you what, it's been amazing to see change of uh, what I've had or seen happen in my time. You know, let's jump back real quick. I when I was in middle school, you know, which was called junior high back then, but I volunteered in the library. One, because I love books, but also we got we had the library had subscriptions to all the magazines, including what were then the big three: Field and Stream, Outdoor Life, and Sports of Field.
Hmm.
And we got all three of those, and they came in a couple weeks before they were ever on the newsstand. And by me working in the library, I got first dibs on looking at those magazines, and I would pour through those things religiously. I mean, and back then, dude, the magazines, I don't know. I mean, hunters certainly were not as sophisticated back then. I mean, you got to keep in mind white-tailed deer 75 years ago were still a rarity. And when I came up hunting, it wasn't necessarily starting by deer hunting like a lot of kids now. You started with small game back then, and you worked your way up to deer. Part of that was because just the patience it took to deer hunt. Even with dogs, you were sitting there half the day in one spot, just hoping something came by. So that has changed so much just in the number of game, the education of the readers. But back then, you had a lot of adventure stories. They talked about the product and everything was cool, but you just didn't have it hitting you from every direction like it does now. So that magazine was really how people communicated. I remember we had, on our local, public broadcasting channel, there was a Saturday morning outdoor show that was on for about a half an hour, sort of a localized Virginia, North Carolina show. And if it wasn't hunting season, I was watching that every Saturday morning. I was drinking it up. I'd flip through the pages. I could see myself on that mountain, with all the writers of the past ages and stuff. And anyway, and then as I got into the business, of course, I went to work at NRA. I remember I was at NRA when we first got email at NRA. So I know it sounds like we used stone tablets before then, but it was a different process, and the magazines were still reigned supreme at that time. But that landscape changed quickly in the '90s with you had the Outdoor Channel and Sportsman's Channel. At one point in the Nashville network, TNN was a big pioneer, ESPN Outdoors. And when they started doing outdoor television, that started drawing a lot of money away from the magazines. It became another huge outlet, great way for companies to brand, to get their message out, capture more action. I mean, I'm not going to lie. I love reading and writing, but I love watching video and seeing the actual action. And as we're fed that more now, we all expect that. So that written word's not always enough anymore. But you saw outdoor television, then the internet really came along. You had message boards originally and some websites. And I think about the time I went to work for the Turkey Federation, which would have been 98, late 98 and into 99. We had a website that just sort of sat there. And I realized, just looking at the landscape, and I was still young then, I was early 30s actually. And I realized, man, I don't know that magazines are going to be around by the time I'm at the end of my career. I better start figuring out other ways to communicate and share the message, because the message is always going to go out. It's just about how, right? I mean, even with AI, and we can get into that in a little bit, because I think there's some amazing possibilities with AI, and I think there's a incredibly momentous downside to it. But there's still going to be a need for human stories and authenticity. And I think the people that can harness that going forward will do well. But what we've seen is every transition. Now, look at you guys here with your podcast. It's no longer message boards. It's, social media. I mean, there's just so many ways. And with everything, there's good and bad, right? There's a lot of dilution to where people get their messages now. So there's not a big concentrated thing. I still laugh when I see movies now where they're talking about a magazine writer, a newspaper writing, breaking some huge story. And I'm like, it just really doesn't happen in real life anymore. So that's been the biggest change, but a good benefit from it is, people, sportsmen are way more knowledgeable now, even as young teenagers, than they were in my age. I mean, it's during COVID. I'll tell you a real quick story. And my son, was got into fishing, and there wasn't much else the kids could do. And we had some lakes around our neighborhood. I live in a suburban area. I'm not out in the country. And anyway, I took him and my stepson to the tackle shop one day so they could buy some stuff. And I was sitting there looking at some plastics and just checking them out. My son walks up and goes, "Nah, Dad, don't waste your time with those. Those are trash. These are the ones you want." And he started telling me how to rig them and everything. I'm like, "Where'd you learn that?" And he's like, "YouTube." I was like, damn. Oh, okay. And then I started looking at some of the stuff he was looking at. Probably should have been doing that before if I was a good father, but but I was blown away at what this kid had picked up just watching videos. And they were going out in these little ponds and they were just catching some toads. And they all had the same mentality too, catch and release. They didn't care about keeping any of them. It was an eye opener for me that day, realizing that there is a lot of good that comes from this. Um, I think the big thing that I worry about is there's also a lot of bad information and making sure people are, I know with turkey hunting, fanning is a big thing. And, you know, had I ever written about it back in the day when I was at the Turkey Federation, I'd have been fired, because it's dangerous, in a lot of situations. Does it work? Yes, it does. It can. It can definitely help you, but you gotta be damn careful. And there's a lot of other things. Part of reality television and part of social media is create something that's more outlandish than the last guy, and at a certain point, starts getting pretty dangerous if people are trying to emulate you. So there's a lot of pitfalls to it, but by and large, I think if someone has someone to guide them, and looking at this new stuff, they can walk away being better for it and not worse. But yeah, it's just been a sea change in how it is. And of course, there's still magazines out there that are doing solid, but it's not what it was for sure.
What do you think? What has it really done to the magazine companies as a whole? Like those were kind of like, I guess those were the stepping stones to this industry, right? Like everybody would wait for that magazine to come out, or we would go to the local wherever to get that magazine of any sort, whether it was guns or trapping or fur and feather, whatever it was. We would always look for that. What do you think that it has done to the industry, not really having that movement anymore?
Well, I mean, the obvious thing is, a lot of publishing companies and magazines have gone away. I
Mm.
mean, Outdoor Life gone. It's digital. It transformed, but that went digital. Field and Stream did too for a while, and then they do occasional copies of it. Peterson's Hunting still plugging along. I'm going to tip my hat to the guys over at Field Ethos because Donald Trump Jr., Mike Scobie, Jason, all those guys over there, they have created a magazine that captures. Let me rephrase that. They have created an unapologetic magazine that really captures the adventure of the outdoors from a global perspective. And they don't hold back on anything. They tell those stories that, I maybe would be a little hesitant in some of my standard outlets. And they have, I don't know that they've caught a huge audience, but they have caught a diehard and supportive audience. And so there's room for magazines, but yeah, certainly, your fractured landscape for advertising. And keep in mind, publishing was really expensive for advertisers too. Uh, a company can advertise and get their name out on a lot of digital outlets much cheaper than they can a print publication. And so some of the economics worked against them, but just that fractured landscape's really created it. I don't know where it's going to wind up. Like I said, I think you've got so many people scrapping for dollars now, and and it just makes it tight for a lot of, for some people coming out and wanting to start something up. Uh, you know, so that's the biggest thing I think.
Mm. Yeah. So and so a lot of it's now all digital. Like there's really not much, like what you write for still to this day is more digital than it is hard copy,
Oh,
right? Like
absolutely. In fact, it's funny. I was hired by U.S. Law Shield originally to do a magazine, and then as we got in there and really got looking at it closely, it didn't really make sense from a financial perspective, and we our CEO charted a course at that point that would put us more on a digital path and working to support our partners. And is 100% the right way to go, And it's funny, everybody knew me as I'd worked in digital since early 2000s. I was at Outdoor Life and worked with them and helped them start their web presence. Moved to Grandview, which was Grandview Media at the time, and actually convinced them to aggregate all their content onto one website, outdoor website, so we could compete with at the time, Field and Streams and Outdoor Lives of the industry, and created Grandview Outdoors. And so I've been a part of that as it came along, wisely, because I think I would probably be out of work right now if I hadn't, But I think, the thing about digital is it gives you so many more options. And it is in this day and age, certainly with all the devices, a better way to communicate. I mean, hell, now I can sit in my deer stand and work. And
Not bad.
no, and I have to sometimes or I won't get to hunt, but no, man, I think digital is a great way to go. I am not, a lot of people thought I was anti-digital because I came up in magazines. I'm like, no, man, I just want to tell a story in a way that it'll get to people, And I think that, it's about building audience and building a connection with your audience, and not bullshitting them, man. You gotta be honest with your audience, because, man, there are guys out there that know a hell of a lot more than I will ever know about. I know a lot about hunting, but every time I go somewhere, I meet a dude, I'm like, that guy knows his stuff, man. And they're going to call you out. And so if you don't know something, you got to be honest. I don't think it pays to, I got to act like I know.
Yeah.
I think that's important.
I think that's one of the negatives in the digital world and in the social media worlds and some of these content creators, is that a lot of it is regurgitated crap, right? First off, because they hear it from somebody else and it's not something that they do on their own, but it is also something that a lot of people don't understand, and especially newer people, like like you were telling the story about your son and fishing and stuff like that. When they do recreates and that kind of stuff, they can hide a lot of stuff and they can make it look however they want to make it look. And I think digitally, I don't think that they tell that whole story, that a regular story or something that you would have wrote back in the day kind of tells, like that you were on this journey and you've done it 15 times and it didn't work out and then you finally kill a deer, where digitally it just looks like you go out in the woods, you shoot a 160 and that's life. Like, and that's the truth,
Yeah.
right? Because I don't think that it tells 100% the full story. I really don't. And I don't think that people are getting the whole entire picture from everybody in the digital side.
Yeah. Well, you're
Or
100%
video.
right on that. And that started with outdoor television. It became sort of like a video game, because, originally when outdoor television came out, you had 30-minute shows that were, most of them were sort of a magazine format. You had roughly 6-7 minutes, not counting, you had about 23 minutes of a show time, 7 minutes commercial time. You had about 7 minutes to get through a full hunt, couple minutes for some product segments to, make sure you took care of your advertisers, and then another 6-7 minutes to show another hunt. And I don't know about you, I have had a couple turkey hunts that did end less than 7 minutes, but it is not very often, man. And on the flip side, how damn boring would it be sitting there watching a guy sit in his tree stand for 3 hours? So, that context is lost. I was never a huge fan of outdoor television. I've had the privilege to be on some shows, and I still cringe every time I see myself on camera. I'm definitely not. I am a face and voice made for writing, not for television. But man, you lose a lot of the context in television,
Mm-hmm.
and I feel it doesn't translate the experience. And then, we kill something, we go out, we hunt something hard. Maybe it's a buck we've been watching for a couple seasons, catching on our trail cameras, seeing here and there. Uh, you work all morning working on a turkey, and he's not coming in, and then he finally does. There's an adrenaline excitement to that moment that you and the people that you are with can relate to and share. I do not feel it translates to a television audience as well, because they don't, a lot of people watching may not have that background. And um, I've watched shows even with seasoned hunters and watched them grimace at the way the death dance was, done over the body of the animal, the way people are like, yeah, and I get it, man. It just doesn't translate well. So, and I don't know what the answer is. You don't want to sit there
Right.
and tell people they got to act like, I also, I'll be honest, you also have on the flip side of that, you have the guys that act like they're in church the whole time they're
Yeah.
hunting, and,
Yeah.
oh, we killed this animal, we must honor its spot. That's cool, man. You do you. Okay. But some of that feels a little staged and over the top to me when I'm watching it. I don't know. It's probably just me. I'm not trying to hate on anybody's way. One thing I've learned, in fact, the biggest thing I learned when I came into this business and finally started getting to travel and hunt in different areas, it is different everywhere. What's acceptable in one area may not be acceptable in another. Doesn't mean they're wrong. They're just different. And you get, when in Rome, you got to be the Roman,
Mm.
and you got to be respectful.
That was a big shift there. Like I remember exactly like you're talking about. Like in the old days, it was every time it was the same thing. It was like, gee, well, shucks, man, the good Lord blessed me with this 150 today, and it was like kind of boring, but we didn't know it was boring because it's all we knew, right?
Right.
And
Yeah.
then all of a sudden, like Waddell comes along and he's like, "Ah, judo chopped on me. He can't hold that." And we're like, "You can do that? You can act like that? Like you
Right.
that's kind of cool. Like I like this guy. He's not like those
Yeah.
boring guys, right?" And like you saw the whole industry shift right there and
Oh, yeah.
kind of become more entertaining and more, exciting and
It
show
did.
emotion and stuff like that.
Waddell was the original Slim Shady of our industry, man, without a doubt. Yeah, and I've hunted with Waddell. It's interesting. Him and I were pups together. We both. He's a little younger than me, but we were in the industry, sort of cutting our teeth about the same time. When I was at Turkey Federation, he was just the camera guy at Realtree. He wasn't,
Hmm.
the bone collector yet. And we had a chance to hunt, and we came along together. And I've worked with him on and off throughout the years, and I'm glad to call myself a friend, and certainly a fan. Um, but he definitely brought a different energy to it, man. And but this is the thing about Waddell. You're talking about a boy that grew up in a place called Booger Bottom, man. He that was genuine. That's what he was like that off the camera,
Hmm.
and so you know it was cool. But on the flip side, I've been at hunts where guys want to pause and say a prayer, and uh, I think that's great, man. I'm not going to sit there. My point in what I said was just that a lot of it doesn't always translate to your audience as well on television. I feel because you don't have the explanation, you don't have everything going into it. You're trying to fit a lot into a little bit of space, and maybe that's where some of the internet's been better because it's allowed people to free form that a little bit more. I don't know.
I think one of the good things though too, honestly, Doug, is like when you do travel and you hunt with different people and you see how different people do different things, right? And how they actually are. Like it's enjoyable, right?
Yeah,
Like it's super cool to you hunt with certain people, like when me and Steve hunt together, we always have a cigar with the turkey. Like it's just
yeah,
something we
yeah,
do. Know what I'm saying? Like everybody has their own little traditions, and You know, when I hunt with some other friends of mine, they're yahoos. Like it's like we know we ain't, if we shoot a deer, we shoot a deer. It is what it is. But we're having
Yeah,
fun. You
yeah,
know.
yeah. No, exactly. And I've hunted down in Florida. Mike Tussey, uh, Osceola Outdoors. They've got a tradition. You kill a turkey, drink a shot of wild turkey, man. Those are cool things, man.
Yeah.
I love it. And I will say this, I guess there's things I could have done that would have helped me become more wealthy. There's things I could have done that would have put me in somewhere else in life. But the one thing I will never regret and that I have loved dearly about my job is all the wonderful people I've had the privilege to get to know all across the country, Mexico, Canada. Um, you you grow as a person when you spend time with these other people, and I've spent time with guys who didn't wear shoes while they were hunting in the Ozarks to surgeons who came from Europe and were finding a life and being rich and successful here. And there's something you can learn from everybody if you just take the time and enjoy the company. And you know you get in hunt camp, it's not all this divisiveness we feel in our society right now. People kind of shelve that for the most part. And it's about the hunt and the experience outdoors. And it sounds a little cheesy, but I think that's what drives a lot of us, man, for sure. you know
He answered the question before we even asked it,
He did
Steve.
his homework. He knows. He came
Sorry.
prepared. He came prepared.
He came prepared. No. um, Doug, I do want to talk about something that you're still doing, and it's kind of what kind of connected us over the past handful of seasons is the whole turkey report and the whole rut report that you're doing for Fish and Game magazine,
Yeah,
because
Game
I
and
think it's
Fish. Yeah,
Game and Fish. Sorry, I always do it backwards. I'm sorry.
that's all
He's
right.
Um,
he's dyslexic. It's all right.
I am I not actually committed dyslexic, but just
Committed.
Steve, Steve sent me up for that. Sorry.
I know you did
Um,
not mean to say committed.
yeah, I know. Um, see, told you dyslexic, but it's all the same.
Just go. Just go on. Spit it out.
So, anyways, so the reason that we've gotten connected is some of the cool things that you're doing now, which I think
Yeah.
are absolutely awesome, and especially that time of the year. So I'd love to talk about it. Is the rut report that you have going on, and I know it's just starting to kick off for you. So
Yeah, it's a fun little project I've had the chance to be a part of the last few years. And Game and Fish, is a print magazine still, one that's still plugging along under the editorial direction of John Toronto, who John and I actually worked together at Outdoor Life at the same time. So that's actually how I got plugged into that. He called me a few years ago. Before he was editorial director, he was still just covering a couple of the regions there, and asked if I wanted to do the strut report initially for the East region, which covers basically Virginia up to Maine and the area where you guys are. And so I was like, yeah, man, I wasn't doing a whole lot of hunting writing at the time. It was all mostly gun stuff and corporate stuff. And so, wasn't a huge time suck, and it helped me plug into what was going on a little bit more, part of that old world hunting magazine stuff that I had missed. And now the strut report and the rut report are all on their website. It's not in their print versions, but they basically, the way it's structured right now is every 2 weeks we do a report, and we've got a guy in the Midwest, one in the West, and one in the South also, who all do like I do, and we talk to people throughout the region, see what's going on, where the activity is, what days, what you can expect for over the next 2 weeks. Last year it was weekly. They moved it to twice a week because stuff does happen fast during the rut, but it's still pretty much, and just I'm going to poke a little fun at the outdoor riders too, because I can remember being in New York at Outdoor Life and sitting there every year. All right, we know we're going to have a rut special. We sit in these magazines trying to do, or meetings trying to decide our cover blurbs. Rule the rut, be the king of the rut, rut time, trying to think of 3 or 4 words that just would sell more copies of that magazine. And as a writer, you're always trying to talk to new people, find new ways to do stuff. But at its essence, man, it's been the same, guys. And
Doug,
those deer come in a rut the same time every year, no matter what's going on.
I was thinking this earlier when you're saying and it's come back around. I went through a phase. It was probably right there. Internet really wasn't a thing yet. Social media wasn't a thing, and I went through this phase where I could not get my hands on enough magazines. Like
Yeah.
I just magazines. I gotta read. I gotta read. I gotta read. And I got to the point where I can't. I to this day I cannot pick up a hunting magazine because I feel like I've read. It's the same article every year. Like I read this last November. It's the same 5 tactics to bag your buck, and it was like, man,
Try
I
writing
need,
it.
I need, I need something new. I need to consume like new knowledge because it's like it's not new, right? And then like luckily, the internet comes along, and then you start going down these other rabbit holes and all this stuff. But then that catches up to you. Now you get on Facebook and it's like I'm reading the same posts again. This is the same
Yeah.
YouTube video. It's like just regret. It's it's getting cranked out, but it's just getting recycled.
Yeah, well, I mean, let's face it, there's not a whole lot of different ways to kill stuff. I mean, you're always going to have things that the industry wants to promote because it dovetails with the product, and everything goes through fads. And to be fair, even people who do stuff year in and year out forget little things. That's why pilots still do checklists every time before they fly because you will forget 1 or 2 things if you don't, and we don't want our pilots forgetting things. But when it comes to writing and telling us, here's the thing. Like I talked to a number of the state biologists in preparation for this year's rut report, and they all could tell me unequivocally, our rut peaks here, and it's going to do it every year on this date. Now, what will affect things is temperature, and it's not that the deer aren't. You always hear guys go, "Oh man, I don't think the deer rutted this year. I didn't see them run around. It was too hot. They didn't rut." Dude, if you only have about 2-3 weeks to bang it out, I don't care. You're going to do that. The species depends on it. So here's the thing. They'll do it more at night, if it's hot. So you're not going to see the activity. This year, we've had a lot of acorns up and down the East Coast. That's kept a lot of deer in the woods, more so than out in the fields in the evenings where guys are used to seeing a ton of deer out. I've had some guys tell me, "Oh man, I'm not seeing the deer. Like I think the population's down." Certainly, there's things such as, with hemorrhagic disease in certain pockets of areas, that can affect you locally. But the deer are pretty much there, man. They're just back in the woods on that mass. That's a preferred food. So those are the things that I try to find when I talk to guys like you, Trevor, and see what's happening up in your neck of the woods, and someone in New Jersey and someone over in West Virginia. Those are things I'm trying to find out because those are things that can help the guy. But I always I always try to take off about November 7th to the 12th, and I can pretty reliably tell you I'm going to see deer like I won't see any other time in the season in those 5 days. Now if it gets really hot, it can screw you up. If the weather's really raining a lot, I'm getting old, guys. I'm more of a fair weather hunter. I'm going to admit I hunt enough. I'm not as angry at them. So if it's really crappy, I'm going to kick back in the truck or the house and just wait for it to blow on through, but I'll definitely be hunting the front edge of that storm because they'll be feeding like crazy before it. And I'm going to get out there as soon as it's done if I can. Those are the things that guys have to look for and figure out. If you've got X amount of days you can take off. I used to want to be out there all the time. Now I want to be out there on the best days because I can't be out there all the time. I've just got done 10 years of travel ball with my son and kids and other kids and high school activities and things. You got a job, you got family, you know. I actually went through a divorce, so I guess part of that was hunting related, but you do have to try to balance the other parts of your life. So most guys can't just be out there all the time, and I think that's one thing some of the guys in the industry that communicate forget, because a lot of us are out there a lot more than the average guy. And we have to remember not every guy can just take off tomorrow because the weather's good. He's probably got a job he's got to be at, but he can look ahead and he can say, okay, these days are probably going to be the best. The weather up next week looks like it's going to be like this. Let me start planning, And those are things I try to bring out in my rut report for the area and for the readers.
So what do you think historically, that, because obviously you've been doing this for a long time, like if a working guy that only has a certain amount of time to do it, do you really think that 7 to the 12th is the days to want to be in the woods? Or
Man, you can stretch it anywhere. I mean, if you really want to get liberal with it, you know, this is. I was talking to Jason Whitlow, one of the guys I talked to in Virginia for the rut report, and he killed a really nice deer last week, the day after we talked, and it was funny when he was talking. He was saying, "Yeah, that October 25th date is just about here, and the weather's changing." And I was like, "Why do you pick October 25th?" And he's like, "I don't know. It just seems like the day that I always look at on the calendar where things start picking up, and I start really getting serious."
mm-hmm.
And it was funny because that's the day I've always said, okay, I'm not going to, I used to get out there that first day of bow season, early October, and I liked it. But, again, I had a son that was playing travel ball. I was usually at a tournament. Didn't have that chance, so I had to start picking and choosing. So I started looking, and last week of October, and my trail cameras right now sort of bears this out. It's picked up. I'm starting to get my first deer coming through in the middle of the day now, just in the last couple of days. More bucks are showing up on camera, bucks that I haven't seen before. So that tells me they're starting to roam. You're certainly seeing more deer in the last week hit on the side of the highway, unfortunately, but that is an indicator that they're moving a lot more right now. I'm in a house in Northern Virginia right now, and I was sitting here working today, and a little 4-point buck ran right through the backyard. We're in a neighborhood, but we got a little green strip behind us, and he was running 2 does around and came out in the backyard twice, just looping around after them. And so right now, this time they're really picking up, and it's sort of like that bell curve. It's the activity is just going to pick up right there to that week, anywhere 11th, 12th, 13th, in that range, and then it's going to start tailing back down a little bit. So I just try to maximize my time as that curve's on the upswing. That's just a fail-safe calendar approach for me to take time off. And where I'm at, it's a bow season only at the time, so it limits us. Unfortunately, Virginia has a muzzleloader season then, and I've got some places that I do go muzzleloader hunt, but my farm personally, that I primarily hunt with some other guys that we own it together, is in the one county in Virginia that does not allow muzzleloader hunting. So, I saw the biggest deer on the hoof in Virginia that I've ever seen 2 years ago, but he's 160 yards away, and I had a crossbow. All I could do was watch him. Had we had a muzzleloader season, he might be on my wall right now. So, it's just one of those things. But that's when I want to be out there, because I want to see deer. I want to spend useful time. I want to make my hunt actually look like the TV hunts where it only lasts about 10 minutes.
Me too.
Do you think that with all the rut reports that is coming out of this, do you think that like different areas have different ruts at different times, like the peak, like say us compared to Virginia, compared to New Jersey, compared to Florida, like do you think that that rut is changed, or is it still in that same window?
So if we were talking the South, 100%, you look at, the pockets in Mississippi, even Florida, Alabama, even parts of Texas, Louisiana that have a much later rut
Hmm.
in parts of it, and in other parts the deer more like. But through most of the whitetails range, that sweet spot is pretty much right in where we're talking.
Okay.
And certainly when you talk about the East, now if I talk to just hunters and not biologists, I'm going to get an answer that yes, it's different. But talking to the biologist, and I tend to trust got them a little bit more because they're using data and they're using years of data. From Maine down here, it's pretty much hitting. There might be a few days, 3, 4 days difference in that peak, but it's not much, man.
Now, what's that? What date is that? Does that fawn drop? Going back off of fawn drop?
Yeah, I know it's like the fifth. November 15th is a date that
Yeah.
most of the states have given me for where that is, and but again, not everything happens
Well,
right then. It's not
well,
everybody talks about the stuff like it's an absolute. It's close. The majority's there, but there's still going to be some aberration to it.
well. I think a lot of people too, they get confused on like what, like when you say rut, what are you talking about, right? Because some guy might say rut and mean one thing when another guy means another thing. So like, are we talking about peak breeding? Because that
Correct.
could be the 15th. Well, another guy might be like, "Oh, the rut's on. There's bucks chasing does everywhere." Well, that's kind of pre-rut. So
Really, the
now,
pre-rut.
so now
You're
you're in
correct
that.
about
Now
that.
you're in that 7 to 11, 12, 12th date, and guys are like, "Oh, the rut's on." Well, they're not breeding yet, so it could still be the 15th.
Yeah.
Be breeding, but you're seeing the rut activity before that. You know what I mean? So like,
No, and that's a great distinction to make. I'm glad you brought that up because you're absolutely right. I tend to use the terms interchangeably, and that I
right?
really shouldn't.
I think everybody does though. Really.
A lot of people do,
Right. Yeah.
I mean, because you're absolutely right. When they're out chasing and running all over the place, that's really still pre-rut. You
Right.
know, I mean, we're sort of in. I heard one guy call it the other day the pre-rut. Right now,
Mm-hmm. Right.
right now you're starting to get bucks moving a little bit more. It's mostly young bucks that are on the trails, but the bigger ones are going to be sliding in here over the next week or so. And then you're going to have wholesale chasing. Yeah, and then you get those 3, 4 days, 5 days, what they call the lockdown,
Mm-hmm.
where not every deer is going to be locked down. You'll still have bucks roaming, but a lot of them, if you've got a lot of does, they're going to be with the doe and not moving much. I hunted years ago in Nebraska, and that was the biggest deer I've ever seen. We had a buck walk out of a draw 80 yards across the property line. Walk out of draw that had to be about mid 190s. And his biggest one I've ever seen on the hoof being a guy from the East. And he was following a doe, and he went out to this huge field, and the doe laid down right under a pivot, and that buck stood right there by her all day long
Mm-hmm.
and never left her. Stood out in the open, but he was as safe as could be because he was on land that nobody could hunt. And we kept watching him, hoping he was going to go back to our side later, but he it didn't work out. So it was a great show. But you're absolutely right. But had he stayed in woods somewhere, she laid down woods, you'd have never known that deer is there all day long.
Right.
And they're going to sit tight on them and not go anywhere. And guys are going like, "Oh man, there's nothing moving." That's really sort of your rut, actually. Technically.
Yeah. I
So
I think undeniably, like you're spot on. Like 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. There's like, especially it's like you said for us, that's bow season. There's no better time to be in a tree with your bow than that week right there, right? But like, I also think it doesn't get talked about enough is like 15 through 20, like after lockdown, it busts wide open again, and it's like just on.
It does. It does. You're starting to slide into what they call the post rut. A lot of times we overgeneralize, call it the rut. The whole period's the
Right,
rut,
right.
but it is broken up into subsections, and you know, for sure on that backside, there some of your biggest deer are killed then. They're chasing, trying to get on those last few does. Most of the majority of your does by that point have been bred. So even if you're in an area, that has an abundance of does, you know, that they have to work a little bit harder than they did at the beginning. And certainly if your temperatures are getting colder, and that's a really good time to focus on spots like food plots and all. If you have some that haven't been hunted too hard, and you're not getting a ton of pressure in certain areas, finding those locations where, because those does will start herding back up and feeding more. They're getting ready for the colder weather. They're getting ready, they're getting ready to, build life inside of them. So they need food. And that's where those bucks are going to be roaming and looking too. So, yeah, there, I personally don't have a lot of luck there where I'm at because we have so much hunting pressure around us, not so much on our property, but just around us because I'm still in the area. We don't run dogs on our land, but they run it around us, and those dogs just the pressure's unbelievable. But I have been places where, yeah, that is damn sure a good time to be hitting it out there.
So the other thing that's also kind of crazy too is that super late, like those last, like they talk about like we call them the lambs or whatever, like the young ones that come into that super late heat, and those big bucks like that early December time.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, again, I think you're going to see that more in areas, where you have better control. To me, I think you're going to see that more out in the Midwest. And this is why I say this. You got larger tracts of land, fewer people. You still got a lot of guys hunting, but they can control their land a little bit better. One thing about the East and the Northeast is we're the most populous area of the country. A lot of your tracts of land are pretty small. You certainly will see some activity, but the hunting pressure makes it tougher. A lot of it's at night. Um, it's a lot of guys are expecting it to be like the pre-rut and just stuff going gangbusters, and it's not going to be like that. You're going to see some scrapes open back up. You'll get some deer moving a little bit more, but it's going to be not as pronounced for sure.
I always see influx in trail cam activity like no December 3, 4, 5 in there, and it's like it's nothing like no early November, but like it's noticeable. You're like, oh, something's
Sure,
going on, but
that's right.
not like November, right?
I, I
No, it can pay off. In a lot of places, West Virginia, their season's already done by then. It's a
Yeah.
muzzleloader season then. And so you'll have fewer guys in the woods, hopefully by then too, that can help out with what you're seeing activity wise.
I always look at it like I'm always looking for a positive excuse or a reason to have positivity for going in the woods because by then I'm like I've been grinding hard for a couple months, like I'm worn down, I'm tired, I'm cold, and I'm like, man, I don't feel like getting up tomorrow. I'm like, could be that second rut tomorrow though. Might happen. It might happen.
Well, you can never guarantee that you're going to kill something when you go out, but you can guarantee that you're not going to kill something if you don't go out.
That's right.
So that's the way you have to look at it, man.
Yeah. Doug, I have a question for you though. Talking to everybody, because you're way more vast than we are. Have you heard much talk? Like, we're not seeing much sign at all. Scrapes are way down this year. Camera activity on scrapes is not like we've seen in the past. Have you heard any of this across the board or?
See, and that's one of the tricky things about what I do, because what you're seeing is not what's necessarily being seen in other places.
Right, right. That's what I'm asking.
I up talking to a guy up in Massachusetts uh, this week, and he killed a nice deer the other day, and they've got bucks moving on scrapes pretty good right now, starting to. And um, I'm I was out in my farm the other day and found several scrapes that had opened up. I don't have enough cameras out there right now. I'm a little behind on getting. I had some stuff break and was busy and slacked, and then all of a sudden I was like, damn, I really need to have more cameras out,
Mm.
you know. But what I am seeing on my cameras is certainly more deer moving during the day.
Hmm.
There's still most of the activity still right before sunrise and right after, and it seems anywhere between 12:30 and 2 in the morning, oddly. But I have just in the last 3 days have started having deer
Yeah.
pop on camera.
Mine definitely picked up exactly what you said earlier since the 25th, right?
Yeah,
But like historically, I can get like nonstop action on mock scrapes right since July, right through. And
yeah.
this year, like I cannot figure out what is going on. And I've been talking locally, like to buddies, me, Trev, and like it seems like everybody's kind of like seeing the same thing, and we can't figure out what
I
it
tell
is
you,
or why.
yeah. I mean, that's a great question, and I wish I had an answer other than I know everywhere is not the same.
Mm.
One of the things that I was getting almost universally from the people I talk to every week is tons of acorns. And I talked to one guy out in the western part of Virginia who was like, I don't have any acorns, so
Hmm.
well, sucks for you, man. I don't
Yeah.
know what to tell you. So you'll always get some variations locally, and who knows why, but I that's a great question. I am going to pose that to the people I talked to this week,
Hmm.
and maybe y'all can do a little follow-up segment,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and I'll try to get some answers for you.
Well,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
so just to preference this too is that obviously me and Steve are both big into the whole mock scrape thing here. It's kind of taken off for us, and these we'll call them, you know, these big communal scrapes that we watch day in and day out, 365 days a year. That typically we would have tons of action on. Like I I just know because the two of us talking, but like one of the areas that I have this scrape on, I've had two or three shooter bucks, and I would have 250 pictures of them by now, day night. Meaning, you know what I'm saying? Like
Right.
it's just like that one concentrated area. Steve's the same exact way. A ton of different shooter bucks on these one cameras, and like for the past month, it's just been dead. It's even though
Really.
but which when July we'd start seeing them in August, and then they come hard horn, and then you're like, oh, okay, so and so is going to show up now, and it's not there, it's non-existent. I don't know if it's a shift in food source. It's just weird because it's really it's funny because I could go back 3 years on the same exact communal scrape and have trophy deer on it, and Steve's still the same. And this year, for some reason, it's not there, and it's
Yeah. I would say certainly shifting food sources could be part of it. Maturity of a forest area. I don't know whether that's changed. I mean, maybe it's down where I'm at. A lot of stuff gets timbered, and you've got tons of thick pine cut over, and over time it opens up. I mean, and when I say over time, we're talking 15, 20 years that it takes to open up or get thinned, and all of that has a drastic effect on where deer are bedding, where they're moving. You take a year like now with acorns, or you have, a field where they planted a huge field where they planted cotton, but now it's in corn or soybeans. All that's going to draw deer. The does are going to be where the food is. The bucks are going to be where the does are. So
right.
that certainly can have an impact. And if you can't figure out another reason, I always blame it on the neighbor and suggest that maybe he's got a big pile of corn over there. And
100%.
The problem is we're both hunting different tracts of big public land, so I can't really blame it on that.
yeah, well, it could be, you could have more guys getting out being on public land. Certainly fluctuations in hunter activity can have a huge impact.
For
I
sure.
your optimism and your positivity, though, Doug. Thank you.
Yeah.
I think this year's kicking my ass because usually I can draw off of like a similar year in the past, right? Like I can be like, oh, 2020 was like a heat wave. Remember, like this is where all the deer were in 2020, and this year is
Right.
similar to 2020. Or remember, 2019 there was like a similar amount of acorns, and this is where I found the deer in 2019. This year, like I can't, like with the drought that we had and the amount of acorns we have and the weather we're having, like I can't think of a year in the past that's similar to what we're experiencing this year. Like I
Really.
have nothing to draw off of, and it's really freaking me out because I'm a problem solver, and I'm
Yeah.
like struggling with this season trying to like crack the code, you know?
Well, I'm not up in Connecticut, but I'm gonna put on my sleuthing cap and see what I can find out for you, because yeah, we do. I mean, we all come face that at some point,
Hmm.
and hopefully you always hope it's a one-off year. I mean, we were sort of having that year last year. We weren't seeing any decent bucks. Uh, we weren't seeing a lot of activity in general on our property, but I talked to guys just down the road. So all I could assume was food source, probably, in our situation, because you know the hunting pressure around us is not overwhelming. It's not like public land pressure, but it's consistent. Few guys on each tract of land that are moving around. Nothing enough to blow stuff out of the county, like some guys I hunt with think. They're like, oh man, the deer see you, he's going to go. I'm like, yeah, but they're going to see somebody else and they're going to come back. I don't know. They're deer. They move around and they respond to things. They're survivors, man, and they are going to find their food, their cover, and that cover changes from year to year as well. I mean, not everything stays the same thickness. It grows up, and they feel better moving to other areas. So, a forest environment is an incredibly dynamic environment, and you're dealing with living creatures, and why it sucks to have that off year, because we all like to have it dialed in. That's part of the mystery, man, and what makes it cool going out. To me, that's what makes it more exciting. If I was going, say, hunting a fenced-in property of
Right.
1,000 acres or whatever, that guy knows pretty much every deer that's on that 1,000 acres and where it's at and where it's going. And not that it's not like a real hunting experience necessarily, but that mystery's not there, man. I love seeing a buck I've never seen show up on my camera, even knowing I may never see him other than in that photo. It's still cool just knowing he's there. I like that part of it.
Absolutely.
I'd have to agree with you there, because actually there's actually one of the Connecticut state records that had been held. There was actually a guy here that actually shot this buck, and he had never seen him ever before, and he just must have came in checking that bedding ground, knew that bedding ground was there, and he just happened to be sitting there and shot the deer. Like, it just came out of nowhere. Like, that stuff happens.
Yeah, well, my 18-year-old put it probably best the other day when I was talking to him, and he was like, Dad, most of it still just comes down to luck. And it really, you help create your luck by running trail cameras, scouting, learning what the deer are doing on your land. You create your luck. But at the end, being in the right place at the right time still comes down to a little bit of luck, for sure. And certainly for plenty of guys out there who don't put all that time in, just show up and want to have a good time and be outside, and they're just hoping something comes along. I've seen guys sitting there smoking a cigarette, wearing blue jeans, and blow down one of the biggest deer to be killed in that neck of the woods for years. Deer mess up too. just like we do. They have bad days like we do. Sometimes they're not as careful as they should be. So you just never know, man. You never know.
Yeah. Doug,
There's a meme going around right now that's been popping up, and I forget exactly what it says, but something it alludes something about the deer win most of the time.
Yeah,
Most
yeah,
of the time they win. It's just that we're just hoping to get that one win,
yeah.
and unfortunately it's the end for him, but like most days he wins.
Oh, absolutely. Well, it's funny. Uh, when I was working at iSportsman full time, and one of the technical guys who was a whiz on, software and building code, he was talking to one of our customers at one of the bases who was asking about a feature that he thought would be good to include in it about observations, because we had it so you could record harvest initially, but you couldn't record observations. And the guy
Mm-mm.
was like, well, it'd be really cool to record observations. And I just happened to be walking by his office, and he told the guy, yeah, well, most of the time when guys go out, they kill something anyway. So we just figured it wasn't any need for that. And I was like, so I waited till he got off the phone politely. And then I went and I said, that is so not true. I was like, dude, you need to go out and hunt. If you're going to work here, you need to understand this stuff. 'Cause he wasn't a hunter. He was a computer guy,
Mm-hmm.
but I was like, do not be talking to our customers if you're going to say crap like that. And then I had to call the guy up and just let him know, hey, no, we're going to get that taken care of. I was like, oh my gosh. Uh, you know, but, uh, but I was like, dude, no, I said, I really, I'm not a hunter who wildlife watches. I'm really a wildlife watcher who hunts. If you look at my results from each year, and part of that's getting older too, man. When we were younger, it was very much a if it's brown, it's down mentality. I mean, there wasn't one walking by. You shot them till you ran out of tags, and now, man, I enjoy just seeing them, knowing them, they're out there. I'll take a few. I'm looking for the big boy. And aside from that, man, I don't need to pull the trigger every time, but that comes with age, I guess.
100%.
Doug, one last question, man, before we let you
Yeah.
go. I want to know what drives you outdoors. I know you answered it before, but you probably have another answer for us.
I, dude, it's my church, man. The outdoors is my church. I feel as connected to the world as I do anywhere I go when I'm outside. And I love it from the first time my dad took me out there when I was 7 to Sunday when I was out there just the other day, sitting on this high ridge in West Virginia, looking out over this giant valley, changing colors, dude. You are just, it's that connection to earth, man. To me, the way earth is meant to be connected to. And sounds a little kooky, I know, but it's what keeps me going, even when I know the hunting's going to suck. I'm still not I'm not going to go sit in a storm anymore. But, unless I know I'll duck hunt in a storm. But, deer, no. But no, I just love being outside, dude. People ask me what my favorite type of hunting is. It's the type I'm doing at the moment. If I'm duck hunting, I love duck hunting the most. And I'm not a very good duck hunter, I don't get a chance to do that as much as I'd like to. You sort of have to pick and choose, and deer and turkey have been my two big things. But I love seeing a big deer in the spring. I love those warm mornings and hearing those birds crank up, man. I mean, and it's sort of experiencing all of that makes it worth going out. And that's, I guess that's what drives me.
Can't agree more. Doug, can you just let everybody know where they can find this rut report or the strut report? Because I know that there's going to be a ton of people that are going to want to see it.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
follow along.
And for all your guys that are maybe in other parts of the country listening, yeah, they cover it nationally. So just go to Game and Fish. I think it's gameandfish.com, and look under the hunting tab at the top. And one of the first things you'll see is the rut report on there. And we're doing it every 2 weeks. So we update it. It comes out on Thursdays. I think the next report will be next Thursday. And but you'll get some pretty good insight on what's going on in your neck of the woods. And and if you're in the East area and you're out there listening to this, look me up on Facebook or Instagram. DM me. I'm Hunt Editor on Instagram, and just Doug Howlett on Facebook. DM me and keep the hate mail and messages to a minimum. But I find some of them entertaining, uh, but yeah, and let me know what's going on where you're hunting. So yeah, I appreciate y'all having me on today, guys. It's really been a good time.
Yeah, it's been a long time coming, Doug, and I love waiting for your text every season. Hey, what's going on in your neck of the woods?
Yeah, well, you're about to
It's
get another
great.
one in a couple days, brother. So
I figured as much. um, Doug, just to throw this out there too. What's probably one of your favorite magazines that you ever wrote for, so somebody could go and find it
favorite
with a cool
magazines?
or favorite story, and you edited it and put it out somewhere like where.
Well, I will say this: I am, of all the things I've done in my career, I am most proud of my time at Outdoor Life magazine. Um,
Mm,
I was there for right at 4.5 years. They were located in New York City at the time. But when you work in the outdoor industry, if people aren't in the outdoor industry, they don't really know what the turkey fed. I tell people I work for the Wild Turkey Federation. They thought I worked for the distillery, and which would have been a great job.
That's pretty
There's
cool.
no doubt.
That's
I would
pretty
not
cool.
have complained about that for sure. But that's not what I was doing. But everybody had heard of Outdoor Life, and at the time I was there, it was certainly along with Field and Stream, two biggest magazines still plugging along in the outdoor industry, and I, I I'm just proud that I was able to elevate my game and work to the level where I was able to work with the best in the business. So certainly that's the most proud time. Aside from that, man, it's just like hunting. Stuff I wrote last week's the best. I want you to check it out. So yeah.
cool. Doug, we really do appreciate you jumping on, man. And it won't be the last time, I don't think. I think once we started this, now it's just an avalanche coming.
Dude,
So,
we
Yeah.
didn't even get to
Doug,
talk. We didn't even talk about AI really. So you're definitely coming back for
no, we
that.
Oh
didn't.
damn,
No.
yeah, man. There's
Look,
so much to talk about.
You're
But
coming back. We're talking about AI.
but I'm not gonna
Yeah.
lie. I hate a damn podcast that goes more than an hour, and we've already stretched that. So my attention span doesn't last that long anymore, man.
No, we'll have to have you back on, Doug, and make sure that everyone goes out and checks out the Rut Report and the Strut Report. We'll make sure to do a little bit better in posting it so that everybody we'll post it when it comes out. So
Yeah,
we thank all
appreciate that, guys.
absolutely, and we thank Doug for coming on, and for everybody else, thanks for taking the ride right here on the Outdoor Drive. Ended. We're clear.
All
Super
right,
cool.
good.
Awesome. That was
I
cool.
hope that was okay.
It was great.
Oh, it was perfect.
Good.
I love
All right,
I
cool.
loved every